How you doing, folks? This is Nelson George with a Black History Month story that relates to the Nelson George Mixtape, Volume 2, available through Pacific Books in Brooklyn. And specifically, I'm going to talk about the backstory to this piece. It's DJ Kool Herc and his B Beats. It was published in the New York Amsterdam News in July 1978, and it is arguably the first piece done on what we now call hip hop. There may be another piece somewhere that I don't know about. There's a chance there might have been an article in Billboard paralleling this, but certainly it's not the first article written about what we call hip hop. It's the second, or it's in that group. And it's because of the article exists because of this man, the late Robert Ford Jr., who was my mentor. He died in 2020. But so this piece, the story of this article that's in this collection, and that has a great deal of hip hop history connected to it, goes back to Rocky. And that goes back to actually me being, I think my first year, somewhere between my freshman year and my sophomore year at St. John's University in New York City. I went to the Beacon Theater to see a series of shows called California Soul that were basically promotional concerts to celebrate the fact that Warner Brothers Records was getting involved in black music. The night I went with one of my good friends from high school, actually, and we sat in the orchestra at the Beacon Theater, and the headliner was Larry Graham and Graham Central Station. And Graham, great bass player, had been Sly's bass player in Sly and the Family Stone, and then had an incredibly funky group that he ran called Graham Central Station. So I'm sitting in the orchestra. Graham is playing a song called The Jam, which is just a funky thing with him soloing and the band jamming behind him. And there was a man sitting about 5 rows ahead of me who was sitting down and had a pen with a light in it and was taking notes. So I'm like, wow, a rock critic or a music critic, whatever. And I aspired to be one. So I followed him out of the building, the Beacon Theater, and much to the chagrin of his date, I ended up, Carol, that wasn't her name. I won't use her name. Much to her chagrin, I said, I want to be a writer, blah, 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 blah. And so Robert Arthur Ford Jr., aka Rocky, gave me an address. So I sent some clips I had from writing for college newspapers. I think one was a review of the Family Reunion album by the OJs, and I forgot what the other one was. And Rocky saw some promise in my writing. I sent him to Billboard, which was then at 1515 Broadway. And so he more or less took me under his wing. He brought me up to Billboard. I got to meet himself, Robert Ford, who worked, his day job was in production side of Billboard, but he was writing reviews on as part of his other duties there. I met a man named Roman Kozak, who was a talent editor, and I met a man named Radcliffe Joe, who was the reluctant disco editor. He didn't want to be the disco editor, but someone had to be, so he was. And between Rocky, Roman Kozak, and Radcliffe Joe, I was able to start, as a young man, a college student, freelancing for Billboard magazine, the music trade publication. Now, there's many stories that go with that experience, but the one I'm going to focus on is this one about Kool Herc. So one of the things I learned early on from Robert was, in those days, if you really wanted to know what's happening in music, you had to go know the retailers. You had to know the record store owners. You had to know, because they knew the records that were happening before anybody else. There were so many great mom and pop, great record stores around New York that you could get the heartbeat of music in the city from. In particular, there was one really interesting one called Downstairs Records. It was literally located in the subway station at 42nd Street and 6th Avenue. And one of the features of Downstairs Records was that it had a really big collection of cutout records. Now, what's a cutout record? The basic record at that time, hot new record, high profile, $12.99, $11.99. That's what you paid retail for a big record. But if a record didn't sell, or the record was never really successful from the first time, they got discounted, and they would be called cutout records, so that you could find records for $2.99, $1.99, and even 99 cents. And this is a crucial thing to understand, because it's the heartbeat of hip hop. That is to say that what started happening, and Downstairs had a big collection. These guys from around the city, particularly the Bronx, were coming down and buying big quantities of cutout records. So you're hearing about this guy, Africa Bambaataa. You're hearing about this guy, DJ Flash. And you heard about this guy, Kool Herc. And they're coming down and buying, 10, 11, 12, 20, 25 of these records, these discounted records. So we go there one day, I go with Rocky, and there's a flyer for a show in the Bronx that next Saturday. And I think I can read a little bit. What did the flyer say? The flyer was, it was being held at Taft High School, which is off the Grand Concourse. I think it's on the one, you Bronx people can tell me exactly, but I think it's like the 170s maybe. So we go down, we take at that time, he lives in Queens, Rocky does, I live in Brooklyn. We meet in the city, and we go up to, get up from 161st Street, I believe we got, by Yankee Stadium. Walked up the hill, the concourse from down there, and then walked several blocks till we found Taft High School. And it says here, it's a warm Friday evening in the Bronx, and at the Taft High School field, people have come from all around to hear DJ Herc jam. He's tall, 26, and quietly calm in a manner that makes adolescent girls giggle. His reputation as a party master is unsurpassed in the South Bronx. So we go up. Actually, let me pull back a bit. We go up. He's not there yet. What is there are just a gang of kids, hanging out. There's some doing things like girls doing jumping jacks or jump rope. But there's just lots of guys hang out, in dungaree jackets and, Pumas, and it's full on late 70s New York. So finally, a van pulls up. A bunch of guys get out. They pull out big milk crates full of records, which is how you transport your records then. A couple of card tables, which they lay out in the yard. And most importantly, they have industrial wiring, or, and they unplug the base of the light. There's wires in there. They connect their industrial wire to that. They pull it through the fence. They bring it into the yard, attach it to some equipment, turntables, big speakers, they call the Herculoids, and suddenly you have a party. And in that party is my introduction to, hip hop. Or again, it wasn't hip hop for quite a while. This is 78. It probably wasn't hip hop till 82 or 83. But let me just read another piece from the article. Not satisfied with simply playing the latest sides, Herc began excavating record bins for cutouts. As I said earlier, the older records that sell for $2.99 and less. His experience told him the young dancers in the Bronx wanted, quote, breaks in records, sections that deviate from the melody to showcase energetic Latin percussion work. So by interjecting into the middle of a current hit the percussive sections of old hits like Dennis Coffey's Scorpio, or a section from the obscure Willie Dynamite blaxploitation soundtrack, Herc creates a heightened and more exciting dance experience. And I talk about his favorite record was Bongo Rock by the Incredible Bongo Band. So this is hip hop in its earliest iteration. And what was interesting, looking back at my memories of that, there wasn't actually a lot of dancing. It was more a vibe, and there were scores of kids around the turntables watching Herc spin. And I think one of the things that, one of the legends that's really true of that time is that for the key records that the DJs had, they were displaying, they would put them in water and wipe off the labels, because that was what you had was your secret weapon, was big in separating you from the crowd. So we experienced this thing. It was really quite different from the disco. There were DJs around New York who were playing some of the similar records. I'll say that. But there was definitely an intentionality to what Herc was, and an understanding, he articulating, what he was doing. Mr. Clyde Campbell, his real name. And I thought, wow, there's something here that's unique, that's different from the disco that was playing at a black club like Leviticus, which was a smoothed out, Leviticus was all adult, hard leather shoes, updo hair from women, lots of blouses and cocaine. This was sneakers, girls with bangs, everything was the joint. It was very, very much New York street as opposed to what was going on, even at black discos. So I wrote the article. It took a while to get it in, because I think that, what was the newsworthiness of this really? It's a party in a park. But somehow I convinced Mel Tapley, who was the entertainment editor at the Amsterdam News at the time, to publish it. And at the same time, Robert Ford, did an article for Billboard. He took a completely different angle than I did, because it was actually more about the cutout records in a sense, because that's what Billboard was about. But my piece and Rocky's piece ran both, I believe, in July of '78. And that was my beginning of a journey that I never expected, that I'd still be talking about some party that happened in 1978, all these years later, over 50 years later. Is it 50? Not at 50, but it's nearly 50. And then it should be noted that Rocky got really committed to, and seeing that this thing was new, this rapping, because the rapping DJ part was something he was really attracted to. And he eventually hooked up with Curtis Blow, hooked up with his manager, Russell Simmons, who was they're both guys at City College. And he ended up, along with a guy named J.B. Moore, and with some help from Larry Smith, who went on to be a producer in his own right, Rocky and JB made Christmas Rapping. With actually the editor of Billboard at the time, a guy named Adam White, is the British voice you hear on that record. And then they made The Breaks. So it all came out of this relationship that happened, back then, and going to the Bronx on a Friday night in 1978. That article is obviously a big part of my legacy. It's a big part of the legacy of hip hop. And again, who knew that little piece is not a very long piece, would have historical import. You never know. So if you want to check it out, it's in the Nelson George Mixtape Volume 2, which is all hip hop articles. If you check into there's a description. There'll be a description of how to get a copy if you want to check it out. But that's my second sort of Black History Month story from my career in music and in culture. Nelson George, I guess, is to Follow the Sound, part of that series as well. Once it gets warmer in the city, I'll be doing more stuff outside. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this Black History Month memory.